Hey YouTube, Aiden here. Reminder, if you want to lesson with me, check the link in the description. Bloop. And today we're going to talk about bass trumpet, a little bit of a sound comparison, and just a little bit specifically about this bass trumpet that I'm borrowing and I have to give back soon. So I thought I'd just make a video about it real quick. Bass trumpet is trumpet, but an octave lower. That seems kind of obvious. There are bass trumpets in E flat and F. F trumpet can be an alto trumpet or a bass trumpet, I think. Kind of most bass trumpets are in E flat. Those are more rare. C or B flat. This is a B flat, so literally an octave below a B flat trumpet. C trumpet or C bass trumpet, obviously octave below a C trumpet. Most commonly, probably in orchestras, you're going to see a C bass trumpet. Just kind of the thing to use in the orchestra. This is modeled after the Bach bass trumpet that Bach made, I think, in the Mount Vernon era. I'm not sure if they made it like before that or even after that, actually. I really haven't seen a lot of later Bach bass trumpets. But a kind of distinctive feature of the bass trumpet is it has trumpet valves, so not from anything else. They're the real trumpet valves, a very small bore, and pretty gradual flare, so it's very cylindrical, much like a trumpet, as you would expect. This is a Kanstul, which is a copy of the Bach bass trumpets, but they used valve trombone valve section, so it's not quite exactly the same as the Bach's. And it does play quite well, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, real quick sound comparison. I have a couple instruments that you might think are analogous or really close to bass trumpet that are not. So here's just a bit of Arbin. Here's your sound. Here's an instrument that is commonly substituted in place of bass trumpet, the marching baritone. And just for an example, obviously this is not a valve trombone, because I don't have one, but it's a lot closer to valve trombone than anything else I have. So you can hear there's pretty clear sound differences between these three instruments. A lot of people will go, oh, well, this is just a valve trombone that's wrapped to look like a trumpet. No, valve trombone is usually a trombone with a valve section that's wrapped like a trombone. It might be shortened in front. It might look like a flugabone or whatever. Those are slightly different as well. But they're not bass trumpets. Bass trumpets are small. These have small bores. And they usually have the same kind of setup that a trumpet would, where it has a receiver and then a lead pipe, and the rest of it goes on, instead of starting with a lead pipe like a trombone does in most cases. Bass trumpets also play best, at least the ones I've played and all the ones I've seen, play best with a really small mouthpiece. This is a Bach Corporation 12C that I just had sitting around, which is actually really good 12C, I think. Honestly, way too small for me on trombone. I don't like anything really smaller than like a 7 size, personally. And I tried using my New York 7C on this for a while, and it didn't feel that great. And then I plugged this in, and boom, the instrument came to life. It sounds like a trumpet, and that is the purpose of the bass trumpet, to bring that trumpet sound down an octave. Not to have a giant sound, more like the marching baritone, which is more euphonium-like. It's not euphonium entirely, but it's euphonium-like. And it's not to have the same kind of, I don't know, great sound that a trombone does, but it has a trumpet sound, and that is the purpose of the bass trumpet. And I think people probably get confused about that a little bit. That's okay, it's confusing. There's a lot of instruments with valves that are 9 feet long, which is B flat length, that all kind of seem to do the same thing. We've got bass trumpet, we've got marching baritone, we've got flugabone, we have marching trombone when they're wrapped short and not with the thing over the shoulder. There's a bunch of instruments that seem to do the same thing, and in some cases they can stand in for each other, but in serious bass trumpet land, the bass trumpet's kind of the only instrument that can do that job. I would never use a marching baritone, hello, in place of this in the orchestra or in the opera, which is most often where this is called for in legit settings. In a jazz setting, whatever, use whatever you want to play. This would be pretty fun to play in a jazz setting, actually. And I have a friend who does it really, really well. He has a Kahn and a Bach bass trumpet, of course. He has two. And it doesn't quite matter so much that you're using an authentic bass trumpet with the right mouthpiece or anything like that. But in the classical setting, this is kind of how you get that sound. There are a bunch of different variations on the bass trumpet. Most of the European ones are rotary valved, and they have the valves kind of like on the side like this, just like a rotary trumpet would. Typically they have 4 valves, and they'll have a bunch of like slide adjustment stuff to stay in tune. One of the best instruments I've ever played was the Leish bass trumpet in C, I think, at the Leish Trombone Festival. They just had it sitting around, and it was like one of the best instruments I've ever played. It just was so easy, it was so in tune. Man, if I had a bass trumpet, I'd want one of those. Let's talk about this Kanstul bass trumpet real quickly. So, like I said, this is a copy of the Bach bass trumpets, which were originally built with trumpet valve clusters. For some reason, even though Kanstul makes, or made, they don't exist anymore, even though Kanstul made trumpets, they decided not to use a trumpet valve cluster, which is a bit of an odd choice. They used their valve trombone valve cluster. I don't know if they had extras of these sitting around or something. It seems like an easy choice to use the trumpet thing that was originally in place. It probably does make it slightly easier to play, but also kind of takes it away from bass trumpet a little bit. And these are pretty good valves, but if it were trumpet valves, they would be even easier. They'd be even closer together. They'd have even shorter of a throw. And that's honestly pretty nice coming from stupid instruments like this with like 1-inch valve throws. It's got a first valve kicker, and it also has a third valve, or not third valve. It's not a third valve kicker. It's by the third valve where you'd expect it on a normal instrument, but it's actually for the main tuning slide. Or I guess this isn't the main tuning slide, but for the whole instrument. This is the main tuning slide in front, just like a trumpet. This is an extra wrap to keep it not super long, and that is the whole instrument. Which is pretty handy, I gotta say. Intonation is okay. I feel like the octaves line up pretty well. Obviously, the 1 and 3 combination. I have to kick out the main tuning slide all the way and kick out the first valve of this. It's super sharp, which is odd because the second valve by itself is a little bit flat. Which puts the D flat above the staff, C sharp above the staff, just a little low. And you have to play it with 2 and 3. So a couple intonation quirks. It actually plays pretty evenly all the way down to low E. The pedals are actually pretty good, and most importantly, since bass trumpet usually plays pretty high, the high range is pretty good. Not that I can do it very well, because I'm not very good. But the high range is actually pretty good on this. Overall, I think this is a pretty good bass trumpet. If someone gave it to me for free, I'd use it. If I could choose any bass trumpet, I'd probably buy a Leish, because it was amazing. Also, ergonomics on this are not ultra stellar. Like, it's not bad. There's plenty of room for your hand in here. The spacing of this stuff isn't bad, but this kicker is like exactly where you want to put your right thumb. You don't want to put your right thumb in this. That's for the left thumb. So just a little bit of lack of space right there. And also, just like any bell front instrument, it sucks holding it up in front of you. But it's something you get used to, I guess. So, little overview of bass trumpet, why it sounds the way it does, why it's the only instrument that sounds the way it does, and a little bit about this Kanstul. See you guys next time.